This is not Hotel Utah. This is a sensitive story in our family because I've offended a few people pretty heavy. And I intentionally offended them. So in our family, and people may or may not ever see this, but in our family, there's several family members that have taken advantage of other family members. But I'm going to go back a little bit in history. When I was growing up, my dad worked on the railroad. Jerry worked on the railroad. And he would come home and he would be exhausted. He would work on the railroad and he would sell carpet. He would come home and leave and go sell. He was working two full-time jobs and worked his off. He would very oftentimes have very little sleep to work on. He worked his heart out for our family. He worked all the time on the railroad. He worked all the time on selling carpet. He was a workaholic. And I'm sure that's why he yelled all the time and he was ornery. He was very out of control a lot of times because he didn't have enough rest. You know, you combine that with a lot of head injuries from football, concussions, have no idea, but it was pretty rough living with Jerry. But he worked hard, and when he would come home, he needed rest. So he'd come home, and a lot of times he'd get home on, say, Saturday night, and he was really tired, and he would wake up and then go to church. When he would go to church, and he went to church maybe half the time, but he'd go to church and he'd want to come home and rest. Well, we had an and their family, and they would show up unannounced all the time on Sundays and stay for a couple hours. And my dad was fit to be tied. He was so livid and pissed that these people, I don't know if I should say their names. You might know who they are, but they were on my mom's side, and it would make him livid. It pissed him off so bad. They would show up for dinner, show up for dessert, show up and visit for an hour or two. Just show up. No call, hey, can we come up or anything like that. Show up with their family. And they were really boring people. You know, they were really quiet and boring, and so they were really difficult to entertain. And my dad was always so mad that they would show up and do nothing and take up his time with his family, his rest time. And my dad never had the guts to tell him, you need to go home and you need to call before you come up here. Don't come up here before calling and making sure it's okay to come up. They didn't want to offend them. Well, that pissed me off because he was always mad about that. My mom didn't know what to do. But instead of saying something, they just put up with it forever. Okay? So then there was other guys from the church would come over and stay for an hour and a half. And this one guy would come over and he'd stay for a long time and just bore my dad to death. My dad hated it. And anyway, it was just really hard because my dad was busy. He wanted to do things. And these people would take up our time and his time. Precious family time. And they were not high on his priority list. So on our priority list for these people, they were probably like if a priority list was my top 10 priorities, they were probably on the -2 or maybe down to a 1 or a -5 side of priority. They were way away from his priorities. So anyway, getting back to my story, this is not the Hotel Utah. My wife got really sick with anxiety when my son was about 13, 14 years old. He was in junior high. So she had panic attacks. She was a nervous wreck. I always blamed myself because I was such a hot ass and a hard ass, and I was tough, and I thought maybe it was I still believe to this day that some of the pressure and some of my attitude and some of my ignorant my rudeness added to that anxiety and that problem. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't, I don't know. But for me, I don't know how you could live with me and not have some of those type of struggles because of my personality. And then you add her personality into it, of her stubbornness and her, I'm not going to get into all of it, but there was definitely some conflict. So anyway, so here we are. She is in panic. She's having panic attacks. She's got a lot of anxiety. She's not sleeping very well. She's having a horrible time. I'm having to take care of the entire kids, all the kids, the family. I got a young baby. I got kids from 13 on down. I got 4 kids. I take them to church. They mess around. I bring them home and threaten them that I'm going to thump them if they don't behave at church. Her mom comes home from her mission. Her mother went on a mission, came home and stayed with us to help us, which was a great help. She was very helpful. And I told her when she came, I said, I'll take care of the kids. Don't discipline them. I'll take care of the those kids are my kids. So I ran the house. And I had a wife who was very sick, mentally sick, and on medication, couldn't do anything. I had to do all the wash. Me and my kids, I should say me and my kids had to do all the wash, all the cleaning, all the cooking, everything. So it was very difficult. Her mother comes and lives with us. And her mother one time left. I told her mother, I says, you can come and be here at the house and help Tammy, but I don't want you disciplining the kids. I'll take care of that. They're my kids. And if you get out of line, I will ask you to go home. Well, one time she went home and she never came back. And I'm like, what's up with her? She goes, Tammy says, she heard you talking the other day, said something. She heard you say you wanted her to go home. I said, I never said that. I says, if I wanted her to go home, I would tell her I want her to go home. Okay. With all this foundation of my dad not telling and taking control of his house, and me being overwhelmed with family and taking care of my house, and my wife not being well, my mother-in-law living with us, helping us a great deal. She eventually, of course, went home, but anyway, so Tammy's comes one day. Now, Tammy's family, when they come, they like to sit around and visit, and that's about all they're willing to do. They don't participate in preparing meals and things. They don't participate in cleaning up things. They sit on their butts. I don't like it when people come into my house and sit on their butt and don't participate and help. Drives me nuts. Okay? So anyway, she comes and she stays overnight. She comes in from, she stays overnight, and her and my mom are sitting on the couch in the morning. And Tammy, who's not feeling good, is in cooking their breakfast or their lunch, whatever it was. And I sat down with them and I says, do you think Tammy is doing well? And they said, yeah, she seems fine to us. I says, she's not doing well. And this is not the Hotel Utah. You need to get your stuff and you need to leave. Boy, my wife got madder than hell at me. They got their stuff, they left, and they didn't come back for a long time, and very seldom do they stay over here, which is fine with me. You want to come and stay at my house? Get off your ass and help. Get off your ass and help clean. If your kids make a mess, clean it up. I'm not going to cater to your butt. I'm not going to be like my dad. And if somebody comes into my home and they come and they take advantage of my home and they're not respectful and help us participate in the management and controlling their kids, and they're controlling their kids and controlling the situations and participating in being a help with my family, then they don't need to come here. I could care less. Come and participate or stay away if you're not going to help. So anyway, Tammy was really livid that I told her to leave. This was not the Hotel Utah. She came down to my office and she was madder than heck. And I just told her, this is my freaking house. I'm in charge here. I'm taking care of you and the whole family. And I don't need them sitting on their butts while you're doing all the work, doing nothing while you're not feeling good and taking care of them. I'm glad they're gone. They can stay away. I could care less. If they want to come here and help, that's great. But if they're going to come here and sit on their butts, I'm not interested. Anyway, and very seldom do they come over and stay over here. When they do, I expect them to help out. Okay. There was a time also that there was a time when we were cleaning up after some kind of a family activity at the church, and all the family many members of the family. It's like they think they're too good to work. They're too good to help clean up. They're all sitting on their butts. Now, this is not all of them. This is several of them. Okay, and there's just it's like there's a few that always do all the work and help out. So I started helping out, and I told the people right there. I says, "Hey, you guys need to get up and start helping." They're like, whatever, they just sat on their ass. I says, hey, I said something like, get off and start helping us clean up the church. Oh, they got mad. Anyway, and they told my wife, and she got mad at me. She was livid at me again. You can't tell my family to get up and start helping. That's rude. I'm like, you know what? That's fine. I'll never do that again. So rarely do I go to any of the parties, and when I do go to the parties, I go and I leave. I'm not gonna cater to their lazy selves. I don't know what it is about these people, but they think they can just sit there and everything is going to get done, or their kids can do it, or somebody else can do it. Anyway, this is not the Hotel Utah. You can leave. Okay? If you want to come to the Hotel Utah, you better pay your dues. You better help clean up. You better help with your children. You better take care and be respectful and be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. I don't want to be your maid service when you come here. I want you to appreciate being here and input and be helpful. Wherever my kids go, I try to encourage them. Now, some of them don't always do what they're supposed to. I've taught them to participate and help out, but sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And it really irks me when they don't. So, trying to break the cycle here, though. I'm sorry that was such a long one. I'm sorry this has been such a long one, but I feel pretty passionate about it.